Welcome to the Know Your Fundamentals podcast, the show designed to help professional moms like you empower your well-being, strengthen family bonds, and excel in your career while thriving your way. I'm your host, Kelly Berthold, a fellow professional mom, licensed clinical social worker, wellness educator, advocate, and coach. And I created this podcast to provide a space where we can connect foundational principles of well-being with real-life, actionable insights that help us feel more connected to ourselves and others. If you're juggling life, family, and career while seeking balance and authentic connection, this podcast is for you. Each episode, we'll hear from our neighbors, uncover the extraordinary in ordinary life, find patterns that help us recognize opportunities for well-being, and get practical, fundamental tips to thrive in your wellness, relationships, parenting, and professional life. You're the expert on you, and I'm here to help you thrive your way. I'm so glad that you're here. Let's jump in. Hi, today we welcome Dr. Maggie Sopic. She is a chiropractor and practitioner in functional medicine. And today she's going to talk to us a little bit about women's health from her perspective in functional medicine. And it could be talking a little bit about the menstrual cycle, symptoms that we may or may not expect in a lot of different ways. I'm not a chiropractor, and I also don't practice functional medicine. So I'm really interested to hear what you have to say today. So how are you doing today, Maggie?
I am good. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well, even for today is a rainy day, but yeah, overall good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. So, not like necessarily your typical day today, but first, kind of like just catching us up to speed. What is something that you feel like you really want to focus on today?
Yeah, I would love to focus on more so, our menstrual cycle. So if we are a menstruating human, just diving into some of the concepts that we typically and have been normalizing, where these symptoms and signs may be really common, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're normal or necessarily like our optimal level that we want to be, just to kind of debunk some of those ideas.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's a really important topic. And I think it's also like a really timely topic with women's health. Really, there's all these different stages of, women's development, right? And starting even like in our childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And we are so limited in our education about what is our experience. And some of us is just like knowing that we get a period just because we're getting a period, right?
Right.
So, even as we're going through like our adolescence and, young adulthood, there's still a lot of information maybe that's out there now that we didn't necessarily have before.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's kind of gone from having no information to like oversaturation, and you don't necessarily know what's useful, what actually applies to you, what's real or what's not real, right? Like what's evidence-based and what's not, right? So, I think today you being able to kind of like help us hone in on some of those fundamentals that might be really useful to understand, whether it's a menstrual cycle or like navigating that feminine aspect of like our experience. I think it's really wonderful to have. But first, to kind of like start out, where, becoming a chiropractor, right? Like we kind of like want to focus a little bit on the journey of what brought you to doing what you're doing now.
Yeah. So, I'm not going to go too far back by any means, but, I would say, all throughout my life, I've been pretty active as far as in different sports and, different extracurriculars. But in high school, I think I was experiencing the typical like back pain, and the chiropractor that I visited, she really looked at the whole picture and not just necessarily like, oh, this is just like back pain, I'm just gonna like crack you and send you out the door. And she really educated me and really honed in on just to the whole picture, and really supported me and gave me ways to support my body. And I was like, this is awesome. Like I have never experienced that. And so that definitely paved the way as far as like chiropractic care. And honestly, I initially dove into it more in a sports medicine mindset.
Mhm.
And then, as I was like going throughout different schooling and just having like personal experiences, I realized like sports were still really like it was still really fun to like dive into the rehab aspects and whatnot, but there was just so much more to the story, and I would be seeing patients where it's kind of like, okay, I can work on you here and give you these exercises, but maybe, I would see like the postmenopausal like group or ages, and it's more common to have like a frozen shoulder during that age, and to also have some of these other like musculoskeletal issues, but it may not necessarily be like, oh, I had an injury per se where I bent over and I had low back pain. It could be a little bit more to the story, and so I wanted to get more or provide myself more education to give to patients to be like, maybe it's not as simple, and sometimes it can be as simple as that too. So just that's kind of, yeah, a little bit of my story with that in a roundabout way.
Yeah, so like you're really interested in like sports, right? So what
Hmm.
about like your experience with sports that even ties or sports medicine, right? But that experience of like the interest of just the body that
Hmm.
you felt like also informs maybe some of your chiropractic work even now, right? So sometimes
Hmm.
we take interest in all these different areas and they become applied to the things that we're doing.
Hmm.
Separation too, but maybe enhances. So how do you
Right.
feel like your interest in sports and being a woman playing
Hmm.
had an impact on you thinking about the body differently?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, one, just being a female and seeing, the typical like female triad, especially throughout college, like some of my friends were collegiate athletes, and so them, missing their cycles. And I mean, at the time, during the time, everyone's like, okay, great, I don't have to worry about a menstrual cycle, whatever. And then figuring out like, okay, that's not actually like healthy. We want to dive into really supporting our body, and it's way more than just the manual care of this. This is a little bit more of like trying to find some like integrative tools and collaboration. And so that's where with the sports, we can get pretty far with a lot of the manual care and rehab, but when we want to dive into some of the more intricate aspects, like of the nutritional aspects of possibly losing our cycle or having all these irregular cycles where we can't perform as well anymore, because of maybe we're not fueling ourselves enough, and we're not recovering well because we're not fueling, because we don't have these hormones that are nice and abundant.
Yeah. So even kind of like that curiosity of
Hmm.
we're going about these motions as if this is the thing to do and
Hmm.
not paying attention to these other unspoken areas because no one's really looking at them, right? So if we're not
Hmm.
asking the question of, is this normal? Is this okay? We just keep going about our business, but sometimes that leads to like domino effects in
Right.
our health and our well-being in other ways that come out later because of, you know, chronic fatigue. It could
Hmm.
be from either wear and tear of like our muscles or like our bones or our hormones.
Hmm.
So, can
Right.
you speak on that a little bit about what you've noticed too in your experience with how society kind of treats the the female experience and taking care of their well-being and
Hmm.
it differently now? Do you see like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
if I could have gone back in time, or if I'm
Hmm.
working that's younger, do you talk to them about certain things that you're like, I want you to know this?
Yeah, yep, absolutely. And I will say too, like complete honesty, I think, during that time, even in say like honestly undergrad, I had menstrual problems and whatnot, and I was suggested to go on birth control. And so at the time I was like, yeah, my periods are awful, like sign me up.
Mhm.
And not saying that that's not a good option for someone, but for me, like I really look back and I'm like, wow, I really wish I was educated on options and not necessarily like maybe one option. And if I was provided an option, what's that side effect? So, at this point, um, if I have, and it's a really great, and I'm so thankful for the experience that I have, like the position. And I talk to mothers, whether they're whatever stage they're in, and maybe their daughter is now like, starting to menstruate and whatnot. And they want to provide tools, but it is how we go about our verbiage, because we do have to think, okay, they're whatever age, they're like, okay, I don't care if I have to deal with that later on, but really connecting some of those pieces. And that's why an outside party can be really valuable in that, because they maybe don't want to listen to their mom or their sister or whoever. So I feel really awesome if I am like involved in their care, or if I, may recommend like, hey, maybe you do want to see so and so, and they can drive that experience down a little bit more, and hone in on those educational points. I think I just went on a tangent. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, yeah, you're good. So yeah, I think being able to inform, right, be a place to inform individuals more about what their experience and what they may be going through, and having more of a curious and investigative approach, other than like, hey, you're experiencing this, I'm going to give you either have the option of this type of birth control or this type of birth control. Don't talk about these other possibilities that may also exist.
Right.
So
Yeah.
being in a place to, think about what else could be going on here. These are possibilities. This is talk to you about this. This is something that we can attempt to do here based on what I'm knowledgeable about. And do you feel like having those conversations allows for people to like explore more of their experience without just kind of going with status quo?
Yeah, yep, absolutely. And it does, because I mean, I will say a lot of us, we may not intuitively think like, oh, if I change, like, or if I incorporate more of this nutrient, or, more movement, why, like, I don't really see how that would affect fill in the blank.
Yeah.
So it is a little bit of like challenging our current mindset with this, and seeing again, and determining, where is that person in front of me? Where are they in their life? Like, is this maybe something that they're open to? Is this like an option that is good for them? So at least still providing those options and planting seeds is still, I think, a big step in a direction, just
Yeah.
so that they at least have some information and can make an informed decision.
Yeah. I think sometimes what often can be challenging, and I think health advocacy is so important. I am very much so an advocate for health advocacy, and people don't feel competent in asking questions. So I think a major role of being a practitioner, whether it's in mental health or again being a chiropractor, any kind of medical field, when you know something um, could be a potential possibility, you practice that curiosity, and you ask them to ask you questions back in return. You're helping to facilitate their
Yeah.
empowerment.
Right, exactly.
Because we assume that people will just naturally ask questions. And I think from a lot of our life experiences, like we feel afraid to ask something because there's always a concern, a fear of like some sort of retaliation, even if it's rejection of like they're not going to understand me.
Right. Yep.
So,
Yep.
being able to kind of like ask those questions and open the door. Do you feel like in your experience growing up and like learning about these things and practicing that kind of curiosity, has that helped you be more in that kind of space of fostering those conversations in advance instead of assuming that they're going to ask you, right? So sprinkling seeds, it's kind of like, I know I need to sprinkle these seeds in some context. I'm not just going to wait for them to ask me to give them the seeds.
Yep. Absolutely. Like, there have been, because I mean, and most of the time too, not only like maybe they're a little bit of nervous or some like emotional component with asking, but they just may not know, yeah, at that time, like what to ask, or it may be like a lot of information just thrown up on them and they're
Yeah.
kind of like, I don't even know where to start or what questions. So, you know, yeah, it has definitely helped me learn how to like delicately and like intricately put things and not to be at an overwhelming side, but then, maybe note just some things that they might be able to, or they may expect with whatever care, or here are the options. I'm going to give these to you. I'm going to give you time. And even if you're reading them and you need to ask a question, like as you come about it, I'm a resource, but there are also like other resources within whatever I give them too. Because yeah, it can be really overwhelming, even with just the slightest new information, even if it's just like, hey, I think your muscle's sore or like, tight. It's like, one, they probably knew that, but also like, oh wow, okay, like now what do I need to do, like, kind of going down that pathway too. So yeah, different experiences and different people have just been really helpful for me curating what information should they be receiving now, and how can I not overwhelm the system.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like from that your experience with one chiropractor and how they approached you in a way that wasn't necessarily just like hyper focused on like that one thing, but they kind of said it may be a little bit of this and it may be some of these other things too, and kind of
Mm-hmm.
like that holistic approach.
Mm-hmm.
How does
Mm-hmm.
that have a like impact on your like decision making in a career path?
As far as like um like the holistic aspect,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, I mean,
um
if you had gone to probably seen, different types of medical providers over the years, and then you
mhm.
a chiropractor that kind of like had conversations with you in a way that was slightly different,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
inspire you, and what was it that inspired you?
Yeah. I do think it was like like looking at the situation with a wide lens, and not just like kind of brushing whatever off to the side and being like, yeah, that's normal. This is what we do. We'll see ya in 6 weeks. Um, so that was really inspiring to just be seen and heard, for one, because also like in that time I was in high school and I'm like, okay, just some like whatever brat in high school. And so to actually have like that time with someone and them honoring that time. And so, determining to move forward and be like, yeah, that's a profession that I want to move into. And then, of course, there is the obvious stigma of chiropractors, and like just I don't know. There's an obvious stigma of kind of being off the evidence for sure, and so that wasn't brought to light as I was fortunate to have my first chiropractor like pretty again evidence based, and so through my journey there has been, I mean, the term holistic, sometimes I'm hesitant to even use because it is kind of this like woo woo idea.
Sure,
And like, and so,
stigma buckets, I feel like, in with different words, especially now, right? Like holistic,
mhm,
I practice and I teach a ton of mindfulness, and I have to re-educate people on
yes.
this is what mindfulness actually means.
Hmm.
This is what
Hmm.
your body and your brain are like, ugh, like that squeamish. It's something other than what you may be, that word, that
Hmm.
like the stigma of that word. So I
Right.
understand that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So then I was kind of like, okay, well, I don't know, like, if I want to be like, if chiropractic is right for me, because I don't know if I want that like little bit of stigma. But it also was empowering to be like, okay, well, not every chiropractor is going to think, adjusting whatever area cures cancer.
Yeah.
Like that, I think it left a nice doorway for being like, no, there are a large population of chiropractors where we practice per best practices, and we refer when necessary and practice in our scope. So And then I will say too, like during chiropractic school is when I found like a functional medicine club. And so I was like, oh, what more kind of woo woo stuff? And I was like, I'll keep an open mind and see like, what this is all about. And it was just a really cool experience because there was like a naturopath, an MD, a DO, like chiropractors, and there were a couple mental health therapists that were putting on a presentation of like full integrative care. And I don't remember the case per se, but I was like, oh my gosh, wow, like this is super cool. And so that's where like I really dove into more of the internal aspects and whatnot of functional medicine and tying it, with chiropractic care.
Yeah. And just to put a little bit of a plug here, like a health plug. So
Mm-hmm.
this is for like audience members, but
Yeah.
care is when we are attempting to recognize that certain type of medical providers, or I'm going to also include mental health professionals as medical providers, are working within their competency and also helping to interconnect these other elements that may attribute to well-being with other providers. So if you are attempting to see, if I'm working with someone, I may say, I'm working on your behavioral health. And you may also benefit from going to go see like a endocrinologist to ensure that like some of the symptoms that you're experiencing are not due to maybe a hormonal adjustment, right? So maybe go and get that checked out. Also, check in with women's health, see if there's anything regarding like perimenopause. If you haven't like been updated with some of the things with your PCP, you may just want to do a checkup. So being able to kind of say like if there's certain things going on with our body that we don't have to have one singular individual that is navigating all of that. And oftentimes kind of getting a brain trust of different types of providers that specialize in different things helps us have more that integrative care approach. And some facilities have collaborative care, which I'm working in too, that you have mental health providers that are also in collaboration with medical providers. And so they're working together to support someone, again, with that word holistic, but it's like it's working for the whole person.
Yeah.
Really just focusing on one particular thing.
Right.
Yep.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah. Well, it's for like, some of this is like psychoeducation stuff for the
Yeah.
So, coming back to like just a little bit more about your family roots and like you as a person, because a part of like this podcast too is like just feeling like we're connecting with people and not just like the things that we do. We're more than just our job or just one very specific hobby. So, who are you as a person, and what do you like to do? Are you from Central Pennsylvania?
Yeah. So, and I love that you like make a point to like hone in on the actual person and not just our job. Anyways, that's a tidbit, but yeah, so I'm originally from Clearfield, which is like an hour away from State College, and I grew up I was very fortunate. I had a really great upbringing. I have my two parents and then three older sisters. So I'm the youngest. So yeah, we had a really great childhood. Just we were involved in a lot. And then yeah, I was involved in a lot of sports, and I had I did. Yeah, I did. Oh wait, sorry, you were breaking. Say that again. Sorry.
So let's not overgeneralize. Those sports have meaning. What were those sports that you did?
Yeah. I did soccer, basketball, and tennis. Yeah. So yeah. And then I went to Penn State for my undergrad, and I was in kinesiology. And then I decided to further my education and go to chiropractic school, and I went to St. Louis and Logan Chiropractic. But Yeah, as far as, I guess I'm just kind of boring, and I also feel, I feel very privileged that I had a good childhood, and my family and I were still really close. So, yeah, I'm in state college now, and my three older sisters, one literally lives up the road, and two are in Belfont. And that's not to say there's, isn't some family situations, but
Sister
yeah,
drama.
oh, yeah, if someone has whatever outfit that we, wanted or whatnot, but they all have kids, and so yeah, family is a pretty big, it's a very important part of my life. And otherwise, I love just being active and being outside, like nature and the outdoors. I feel like that's like everyone says that. Like I love going on hikes, but I do. I find so much comfort in the outdoors and just like the water, kayaking and canoeing and being, if we can go to the beach in the ocean. So the nature outside is my comfort. The only like caveat is I'm not the biggest like camper, like roughing it in a tent. That's not my happy place. But otherwise, yeah, I'm a big advocate for being outside.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. And you said you
Yeah.
did have a dog, right?
Do have a dog, Olive. Yeah,
Just
and she's been whining the whole time.
I haven't even heard her. You said she has been whining.
Okay. Yes,
Oh,
yeah. She's like, so if you see my arm like moving like this, it's because I'm rubbing her head to like stop.
yeah. I don't even hear her, but
Oh,
dogs
good.
are really fine. Mine are baby gated currently in the basement.
Oh my gosh.
Because they have to be several floors down to like not be barking and like making like the house like shake because the wind is so totally. But um, yeah, so like thinking about having a upbringing and close relationships with your family. Do you feel like that helped you kind of like think more about like the things that you wanted to do for yourself? Because it's just like, oh, I like doing this thing, and
Mhm.
because I enjoy doing this thing, and I learned about, you know, um, just being able to kind of have the freedom for like education. Did you feel like that was something that things just kind of more naturally came to you?
Mhm.
Were going through your journey. There wasn't any like major rocks that had you like shift directions, but it kind
Right.
of kept building onto itself.
Hmm. I will say I'm again pretty fortunate where um it was kind of molded, or yeah, I guess my dad more so was like, whatever you want to put your mind to, let's figure it out, like sort of thing. And it may not be the top option all the time, but I think it was honestly too out of a little bit of like frustration, I will say, with not necessarily I guess frustration with the education that is typically provided, and how I would see like even my sisters say go through like um different issues as far as like body image, and including myself, and just females in general, and males, but just kind of like seeing that growing up, because I will say it definitely was pretty prevalent in my household, and that wasn't I do think it was more society related, but I think seeing that on me and my sisters, and just kind of like that just makes you feel crappy, like sad. Like I never want anyone to feel that way about themselves. And also I would love that people would have the opportunity to educate themselves, mentally, but also like physically too. So I think that portion of my upbringing led me to, again, where I am. And so those were some of the challenges that, I definitely can't say like where I am today was like just easy peasy. There were times that I was like, maybe I'm not, maybe this isn't the right like move for me. I will say when I was in high school, I was gonna become a carpenter. So I like really took a turn. I like thoroughly enjoyed that. But I think during that time frame, like especially senior year in high school, I was like getting frustrated with options that we're given as far as like education and movement and like being confident. I think as a woman, I'm sure during that time I like wouldn't be able to reproduce that verbiage, but you know, looking back, that's I think how that did kind of shift and shape where I am. Yeah.
Yeah. So being able to recognize that the challenges that you experienced and noticing the irritations that you have with things as status quo.
Mm-hmm.
Those irritations and those challenges led to interest and following something else being possible other than what currently presented to be. What
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
being able to kind of navigate meaningful productivity in ways that were interest of you from a space not just of like blissful interest and intrigue and like, oh, this is just a hobby and everything just makes me time. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't like this and I'm interested in
Mm-hmm.
more and
Yep.
seeing if something else can be possible here.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it this way?
Right.
Okay. So through navigating some of those challenges and following your interests, being able to kind of follow those things along has helped you think about what you wanted to do through your journey and also help you think about the needs of others through recognizing your own challenges of like, this shouldn't be the way it is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I don't need to just exist with this as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to kind of like take the perspectives of the challenges of all the different things that you kind of went through growing up, being empathetic as a chiropractor and a functional medicine practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that if you didn't have some of the life experiences that you had, you would know to be as empathetic or to even to provide some of the information that you do if you didn't have those challenging experiences?
Oh, right. Yeah. No, I am extremely thankful for those challenging experiences. I it's helped me so much in the way of yeah, realizing, and again, every situation is so different, but yeah, to provide that empathy to kind of again be like, well, I've been there maybe, you know, similarly, or I've seen a close family member, and yeah, it definitely yeah, it's helped me really hone in on empathy, and sometimes maybe too much where I need to back up, but it's all, you know, a journey in that too. But yeah.
Yeah, I said better to be human than to
Hmm.
be flat, and not
Yeah.
provide that human connection. So,
Yeah. Yep.
and trusting yourself that you can observe where that boundary is of like, I can learn from that situation. Maybe you need to back up a little bit next time, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so with kind of like bringing us down back to women's hormonal health, menstrual cycle symptoms. Those are some things that you wanted to kind of maybe touch a little bit more specifically on during this podcast episode. So, like, understanding the root cause of disruptions is key to finding the right support for your body. What do you mean by that? And
Hmm.
wherever you want to start, whether it's a menstrual cycle, you know best because this is your job.
Yeah. 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 We'll dive into that. Yeah. We'll kind of
Yeah.
hone in the menstrual cycle and whatnot. So why this is again like a passionate topic is because I mean I had it, especially in undergrad, like not the best cycles where I was like if anyone's familiar with Penn State and walking up like towards the IM building, I like passed out like on the sidewalk. Like that's a major red flag. And so not even to that extreme, but just some of these situations where it does become normal, such as like I mean pain with your cycles, where you get terrible headaches or brain fog or bloating and some like GI disruptions. Those aren't normal, and there are options. And you know, it is typical, and this is not to downplay like the conventional medicine by any means, because thank goodness that we have again options. But it is typical that we are provided, okay, like you have not so great periods, let's put you on birth control so we can just like help your hormone imbalance, which I also kind of don't love the term hormone imbalance, even though like right now it's just the most like it's the thing that sticks the most, I would say. And there is again an imbalance that's going on. And when we're talking about these hormones, we're mostly talking about, when it comes to the menstrual cycle, mostly talking about estrogen and progesterone and testosterone. And so yes, those are hormones, and we have, I mean, more than 50 hormones in general, but we'll focus on maybe those. Um, but they are, hormones in general are our chemical messengers. So it's telling us like something's a little bit off in the system. And so it's through different symptoms and potentially some other data, such as like lab work, learning about maybe their environment that they're living in, or the relationships that they have, that can put us to like, okay, what is truly going on? Is it just more of a hormone situation where I would, more so say if it's truly your hormones, it may be that you're entering menarche, like you're starting your cycles, or it's around perimenopause. And those are more like physiological changes of hormone imbalances.
Mm.
But if you're cycling or having your menstrual cycle and you're like, I don't know when I'm ever going to get it, you're having, some other like skin issues and whatnot, it's time to, really hone in and see like, where is this coming from? And that is where either working with someone or starting at like the fundamentals of movement and nutrition and stress management are huge, because I will say that's where most of the hormone issues are coming from. Not all the time, but
Those
most of
basic,
the time.
right? So
Mhm.
even thinking about, um, we think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's just a very famous kind of basic model, right? But being able to say we have to have certain basic needs met in order to feel like we can go through like acute challenges or short-term challenges and help our body get back to like baseline. But when we constantly are stacking stressors on top of stressors, and whether they're psychological stressors, social stressors, again, like nutritional stressors, not getting the amount of sleep that we need. And as women, we often need a lot of sleep.
Yeah.
Um, being consistent with some of our sleep cycles. Our body then is compensating with other hormones, like,
Mhm.
I could start naming them. I'm not going to name all the stress hormones, but
Yeah.
like, we'll say just cortisol is a big one, right? So
Mhm.
so our bodies need to come back down to a baseline, hopefully sooner rather than later, so it can recover. But if we're constantly going through a number of, again, social or physical, sleep, etc., stressors on a day to day, and we aren't looking at supporting our body through the recovery and coming back down from those acute stressors, it leads to chronic stress.
Mhm.
Chronic stress can lead to, unfortunately, a lot of not so fun physical, mental, and emotional symptoms.
Absolutely. And I mean, one thing that I like typically say to most people, especially, yeah, if you're in that chronic stressful situation, your body, again, if you're a menstruating human, your body cares more about recovering and fighting off that stressor than making a baby. Like that's, if you're menstruating, your body that's its goal. It's to reproduce and everything. And if you are building upon those stressors, that's not the goal of your body at this point. We want to fight off whatever else. So that's where we again may see, that's, yeah, one example of where we may find those menstrual irregularities.
Yeah. And just to put it one more like little mental health note in there too,
Mhm.
you may be someone who's like, you know, maybe I had a harder childhood and I do so much right now. I exercise all the time and I, really focus on my sleep and I'm the most hydrated person. My skin is so dewy. Drinking water, and like I don't eat like prepackaged food all the time. Why am I still struggling through some of these symptoms? And a mental health standpoint, sometimes we'd say Well, maybe your body is habitually used to being in certain type of pent up positions. So so the body holds implicit memories and experiences, which can have an impact on what I'm assuming you would probably know too, like Maggie, like the structure of our body and how we're all.
Mhm.
Do you have anything to like add to that?
Yes. Yeah, my favorite thing is like when, most commonly people will say, I hold all of my stress in my shoulders. And I'm like, okay, yeah, yeah. Like we do like embed whatever, say stressors. And, sometimes again, even hesitant to say like the word stress because it can be helpful. But the other thing too is like with that chronic situation, not only are we, yeah, like embedding this like physically that stress, but we add in like we compensate then. And so we have this like different form of respiration of a breathing pattern. And so what it's called is paradoxical respiration patterns or breathing patterns. And so we then utilize a lot of our accessory muscles of respiration. So like a lot in here, and then we do this. And so that's where and it's one factor, not all of them, but we get all this like tension here. And it's, there's just a large complexity to it, but not to say that care doesn't have to be super complex. It's just, yeah, there's a lot involved.
Yeah. There's habits of the mind and there's habits of the body. And when we can
Yeah.
take care of those habits, we can like be aware of them. What I always say is my motto is awareness, acceptance, choice. So
Mm-hmm.
as soon as I'm aware of it, the sooner I am, the more likely it is I can decrease the frequency, intensity, or duration of whatever that experience is. So if I can catch it and go, ooh, here I am, experiencing this right now, accept the fact that it exists. Judging and blaming yourself for having that experience is not going to be helpful. So it's just like, hey, here it is. Okay. And now let me choose what to do next. And so, the mental health kind of thing is thinking of like, what are your mental and emotional choices that can also lead to like your behavioral choices. And for you, I'm going to teach you how I want you to practice your body being when you're aware you're doing this, and also have like these exercises maybe thereafter. So
Mm-hmm.
like approach the awareness, the acceptance, and the choice pieces, maybe even like in your care.
Yeah, I feel like that honestly, it's a loaded question. But as far as, well, I'll kind of, I guess, put it more towards like a patient, let's say, but for the like more so awareness piece, well, I'll tie it in with the like menstrual cycle. So even with awareness, I may say like just track your cycle, and it does not have to be fancy. It could literally be like typing in a note or getting one of that like a free app and just kind of getting that awareness like, okay, like maybe this is something related to this. And within that, that kind of shows them the acceptance of like, okay, this is something functioning and that's going on, internally. And then what were the last two?
Choice, just awareness,
Choice.
choice. Yep.
Yeah, and so, with that, I mean, then the last step is how can I go about this? And that as the practitioner, I'm going to provide them choices. But, and sometimes I may even say like, here is an option or a choice that I would give like to my sister or to my mom, but just know that there are other choices with this, and that if this doesn't align to you or if it's not intuitively speaking to you, then we can find other options or another provider or whatever it may be too.
Yeah, I think that's great because I think a lot of work is about helping people like foundationally build self-trust within themselves to like believe in their own experience and
Mm-hmm.
honor the wisdom of like their own experience to make informed decisions. Because I feel like many of us feel self-doubt and insecurity. If we can kind of like be aware of that insecurity and then ask ourselves, what do I already know? And can I then also trust myself to ask questions with people that may be well educated and informed to help me find that solution? It could be
Mm-hmm.
both. It's not
Yeah.
that and I constantly have to seek help. It's what do I know and can trust in, and how can that also aid in my exploration with educated provider or anybody, right, to like seek support and find.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
Yes,
absolutely.
that's all, and that's your whole point.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Any other things that you'd like to bring up when it comes to understanding menstrual cycles?
Yeah, I will say too, with our cycles, like, it's again, and I'll keep reiterating, it's a lot of these symptoms that we see are not normal. And so, today, I definitely feel like with any health field, social media plays, the biggest role. And so it can be really overwhelming. And you've even mentioned earlier, we're just in a time of like overabundance of education. And so it's really determining like, where do I start or like where do I go to? And I will just say, just start where you again intuitively feel like you can. And that may be going to an OB, it could be going to a functional practitioner. But I will say too, yeah, with hormones, they're kind of the last issue we'll say to show up, because it is a little bit more complex. Even say if it's just dealing with irregular cycles, or if a person has been trying to conceive for a while, or has been dealing with a lot of postpartum issues. There is a big connection with, and I'm going to generalize it and say like our gut,
Yeah.
but just the different bacteria, and there's a big connection as far as metabolizing and breaking things down, like in our liver and using our gallbladder. And so this is where the hormones are like the kind of the last sign, and then we just want to peel those layers back. And that's not to sound like scary that all of these things are scary things are going on, but just know that there may be more to the story. And there are, again, with that idea of more to the story, there are more options that we can dive into. So yeah, I guess that's the other little tangent. But again, just starting is a good option because it gets so overwhelming.
And I think too, just being aware of what your initial experiences are, and even maybe like thinking about, write them down. What are your symptoms? Just look at what your symptoms are. Like get them out of your head, write them down, and then start. I wouldn't say necessarily like doing like the Dr. Google thing, right? But
Right.
you know, where other people may be saying that they're finding, again, evidence-based. Evidence-based means that individuals are going through like accredited institutions. So, and they are publishing research, or they're informed by research that has not been like hopefully frequently debunked, right? So
Right.
it's research study is attempting to be replicated. So if something is found to be scientifically relevant, it's because there was a study on it, and that study has been replicated, which means the results have been able to be replicated. And so you want to find providers that are working off of information that has been replicated, and
Mm-hmm.
not the one or two, people out there that are saying, well, this is something else. It's like, if
Mm-hmm.
not pointing in that direction, go with the people that are swimming upstream, that have the information that has been replicated. That is
Yep.
the place to start with
Yep.
anything, any medical field. So,
Yep.
thinking about now, maybe like our fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
Get into that next. But first, I'm going to do my awareness, insight, connection, purpose thing. So, awareness, insight, connection, and purpose are the four primary pillars of human flourishing. So it sounds like you became aware that certain challenges in your life, certain things that you experienced or you noticed other women were experiencing, those frustrations for you also helped you recognize like an interest that you had regarding certain types of subjects. You followed that interest and those challenges, and that led to a deeper insight that you had about some of the things that you wanted to pursue for yourself, and the ways that you were going to combine information maybe through your life experiences to help you help other people that maybe were also struggling with some of the things that you felt you were struggling with, that you weren't alone in that whole space.
Mm-hmm.
So that led you having deeper connections with what?
Wait, sorry.
Yeah.
That last part. Sorry, it cut out.
That's okay. So what do you feel like how do you feel like your awareness and your insight led to a deeper connection with yourself through acknowledging those challenges and seeking, you know, I'm going to use the word inquiry, but I can be like less, be like more natural speaking and not sound like I'm like writing a research paper. So how do you feel like the way that you started pursuing like through your life and your childhood and your adolescence and your young adulthood and these experiences that you're having individually within yourself, but also seeing some of these systemic challenges, how did that lead you to having a deeper connection with yourself and other people?
Yeah, again, that's like it's a wonderful question and a loaded question. And so with having a deeper meaning or purpose, I think I reflect in the way of like making sure those that I see, or my patients and clients, like that they're aware, of these menstrual issues. We'll say that, or whatever issues they're coming to me with. Like the biggest thing is that time is so important to us and precious. And so even with myself, and I've learned to create boundaries, and even with my patients, like I don't want them to have to go through, say, well, again, for an example, like a menstrual irregularity or difficulty with fertility. And not to say again that I'm the one that will be solving that problem, but just time is so important. And so if we can just really, as much as we can, eliminate just excess, like, I don't know, BS surrounding their issue, that's where I've really found that deeper connection with everything, is just more so honoring time for me, for myself, and for all those around me.
Yeah. Yeah. So, being able to recognize that like these interests and you're impacting other people's lives, you're doing things, meaningful activity for yourself and through your work, but obviously like you have hobbies, you have a whole collective person, and you're attempting to like shift in your environment and your relationships, the challenges that you had experienced so other people don't necessarily have to go through those experiences. So you're forward. So thank you for that. And now I guess we can get into our fundamentals. So what are some fundamentals that you'd like to share that are tangible, that people can get their teeth and their hands around?
Yeah. So, like a portion of this, like it will sound very simplistic, and I'm sure it's one of those like, yeah, I do that anyways, but I do want like listeners to think about like this as a check-in. Like, am I actually doing this, or is this something that I'm like, yeah, done it, like whatever. So the first thing that I would say, and maybe I'll kind of tie this, it's a little bit more into that awareness piece, is on the conversation of like menstrual cycles and our periods. Like fundamental is creating that awareness, to be honest. And like if you're not tracking, track in whatever way that you feel comfortable. And if you need resources, reach out to, again, whoever, some of the practitioners. But more so, the fundamentals that I wanted to hone in on is one, including enjoyable movement. Like, and when I say movement, like if you can sweat daily, that's even like another level that we would want, just because again that really helps. Like if there are any, say, like we'll use the term waste products, but just like any, like, bugs or whatnot that we want to kind of get out of our system, and it's really helpful for detoxing like any, again, waste products that are in the body. It's also, there's just such a benefit to exercise, and it doesn't have to be like, oh, I have to go do this like exercise class. It could be playing with your kids, like that enjoyable movement. So including that daily, and if that's even a start of like where to go, like if that's the only checkbox of the day, fine, just start there too.
Yeah. Dance, right? Like listen to music.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? That's,
Yeah.
like, enjoyable. If you're in your car, right? Like
right. Yeah. Yeah.
get moving a little bit in that kind of way too, right? And
Yeah, I think we get a little honed on, like, I can't say that it's a bad thing, but I know everyone's like, get my 8,000 to 10,000 steps a day. Movement is super powerful, but if also like just getting that in and beating ourselves up about it doesn't do us any favors.
yeah,
So if you just, again, be like, yeah, I moved, I danced, I played with my kids, great.
yeah.
Um,
Move,
the,
yes, work out. Just
yeah,
whatever feels good, just move, and you're doing
yeah,
it for your body.
absolutely.
Yeah.
The next thing is more, I guess, on the nutritional base. This is to just aim for diversity in the diet as much as you can. And so this will sound super overwhelming to some and not to others, but if you can try to have like 6 to 9 different colors of food a day, and again, maybe someone's like, I only really have like 4. Like, I will have like my strawberries and a veggie and like my protein or whatever. That's fine. That's a great start. Let's increase that a little bit more to like the next day. And so these nutrients, and again, like these things can be frozen, and it's okay. Like, it's okay if you, like, for affordability reasons and whatnot, again, go where you can. But that diversity is just going to be so impactful for just feeding a lot of the good bacteria in our system. And again, super helpful cognitive wise. And so just adding that diversity. So again, it could just be like printing out a chart of like options that you even have in the house and just starting like checking them off per day and just being like, okay, yeah, I had 6, different colors today, and then hopefully increasing those throughout the week. So yeah, just meeting where you are.
Do you think like a cheat could be that you just take like all 6 and put them in a blender and then chug them?
Yeah, go for it. Yep, go for it.
Over with, plug your nose.
Yep. I
Yeah.
was gonna say, as long as it tastes good, but even if it doesn't taste good, chug it back. I mean, I even say this to some of my loved ones, like, we are adults, unfortunately. You have to eat a vegetable. Like, I know sometimes they suck, but they are like fine ones. You can make them taste really well and whatnot, but adding that nutrient base is going to move you miles. And doing it consistently to where you can.
Right. And when in doubt, just chug it.
Yeah. What? Oh, I think I lost you.
No, I can still hear you.
Okay,
I
there
think
we
you're
go. Sorry.
okay.
Okay.
It's all good. Okay. And
Cool.
what's your you have 3.
Yes. And then my last one is, which I feel like I was like debating on this one too, because I feel like it's very like in the media, but it is a real thing. And if you can change to, I'm going to use the cliche of like non-toxic swaps. And by that, there are a lot of endocrine disruptors within certain materials. And again, this isn't like an all or nothing thing. So even if you're just like looking through your cabinets and you notice a lot of your like storage is, say, like Tupperware or plastic, maybe every now and then switch those out for glass containers, and they can even have like the coating or whatnot where it doesn't break. I can't think of like the word,
Yeah,
but anyways.
silicone kind of stuff. That's like
Yeah, thank you. Silicone. Yeah. Yeah.
the box touching the food, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
or if
Um,
you are using silicone, like food grade silicone, that's kind of like the things that you're describing here, right?
Yes, yep, absolutely. And like there are simple swaps, and it doesn't have to be like every single thing in your house you have to go overboard. But even like if you have candles or different like air fresheners, like plugins, they aren't the greatest as far as like, even if you've had a history of, say, like mold or water damage, and having those fragrances, it's just not like really beneficial on our system. So making those bit of swaps, you can still have like essential oils going on that smell really good. So
Like
there are options.
fragrances and all the even like perfume, right? Perfume in itself
Mhm.
is a endocrine disruptor. I
Mm.
Meg, not want to be the bearer of bad news here.
I know.
Olympic. So like yeah, there's like a lot of different things that could be, those endocrine disruptors, and But fragrances in our shampoos, fragrances, anything that just like on the bottle says fragrance.
Mhm.
Are there other ones that you feel like could be good ingredients just to keep an eye out for day-to-day products?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, some other things like, well, I guess when it comes to, I mean, honestly, our cleaning products too, and our makeup. Um, Fragrance is a big one, but just if there's any like different sulfites or different plastics, some of the names just get really long.
Yeah.
My recommendation there, I think like the Environmental Working Group, EWG, they have a good list of them. As much as you can, like I would adhere to a lot of those lists. There are some other good resources though too that have some like brands. Sometimes I can't share brands because I like with just my profession and whatnot. It's like a whole affiliate thing.
But I think
But
WG has an app, right? I think
yeah, yep.
I was
Hmm.
realizing we're doing a pod. Like, where's my phone at? We're
I
podcasting.
know. I did the same thing. I was like, wait, I have like a
Yeah.
list of all my resources. But with that, I do have a list, which if I can put it, or I can send it to you if you want to put it in a Facebook group or wherever.
That's totally fine. But I think EWG, I think I use their app, and
Hmm.
and if it's not EWG, there is a great um app that helps you identify certain types of ingredients, and they kind of like
Hmm.
write high risk, intermediate, mild,
Yeah.
etc. So I'll
Yep.
go ahead. But no, I think the idea of like non-toxic swaps, those are things that we just don't even necessarily realize. And I think too, a lot of our products are tricky. I think that they just released the thing of like, oh, your Apple iWatch,
I
wristband has forever chemicals that's seeping into your skin. It's like, oh my gosh, like, is there nothing that is just
I know.
more?
Yeah.
It's bottles that are like giving you something else. So you do the best that you can have. There
Yes.
are courses, but catastrophizing is not necessarily going to help us either. But
Exactly.
we're aware, and we can
Yeah.
make more conscientious choices, and that's
Right.
very important. So,
Yep. Absolutely.
so what's your quote, Maggie?
Yeah, so I know I told you I changed this because I was like, I don't really like the one that I originally sent you. But so this was actually given to me or told to me by the massage therapist that is also in my building. But we were having like a deeper conversation of just taking care of ourselves, and at the end of the day, we're kind of all we have. And so she shared a quote that, and this may not be verbatim, but one of the greatest acts of community service is caring for yourself. And so, with this, it's just again like signifying like we want to prioritize our health and energy and clarity and just being the best you that you can, because then you end up being the best parent and friend and partner and professional. And so, that just allows us to again be the most present that we can. And we just often neglect ourselves. And I mean, I think many mothers can relate to that, and professionals. And just then it leads us to burnout and fatigue, and sometimes even resentment. And so we just want to dive into that. And it's okay. It's good to invest in your own well-being to then be the best that you can, and then provide that to whoever you need to.
Absolutely. And I think that, as the saying goes, like putting your mask on before you put, a mask on like something else, right? With a
Mhm.
And at the same time, I feel like, well, that only makes it sound like in really stressful situations should we be doing that. And it's really fill your own cup first
Mhm.
or
Yes.
other people's cup. And that's all the time.
Yeah.
So we know that that is the healthiest way. And I know that. And do I do that all the time?
Right.
Probably not.
Right. Yep. You're human. Yeah.
Right? It's the computer for so much today. It's like I got to move. So it's naturally going to be hard for us to do that because so much of society and even just like our own upbringing and even our biology say do these things. There's
Hmm.
strong current for us to focus our attention and energy on what we think others are constantly expecting of us. And the benefit is even though it's going to naturally be harder to do that, and it will be for most of us, it will be naturally harder for us to focus on not just putting on that mask, but like filling our own cup more often than not. The more often you do practice doing that, the easier it does get over time. But consistency is key, right? For any being practice, consistency makes it easier. But if you get off that horse, you can fall down. It's okay. Just pick yourself up and try again. And know that's the thing to do for yourself. You're not doing anybody else a disservice. So that's Maggie. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up our podcast episode. So, yeah, one thing that you were talking about with like time being a resource. So I'm actually going to be going live on my private Facebook group and doing a time training to help people feel like they can be more empowered with their time. It's going to be recorded and it's going to live forever in that Facebook group. So even if you can't make it on Tuesday, if you have any interest, you can always just jump into that group and get it. Everything in my my private group is completely free. Trainings, resources, everything. And I'm just kind of like throwing it out there because I'm so passionate about just helping other people and also not filling my own cup first, whatever. But I'm working on it. Yeah. Thank you, Maggie, for joining us. And it's great to have you. And I will hit the stop record button now.
Okay. All right.
Thank you for listening to the Know Your Fundamentals podcast. I hope this episode gave you some valuable tools and helped you feel more connected to yourself and others. Get more life, family, and career fundamentals when you follow Know Your Fundamentals on social media, including Instagram and YouTube. You can also join the Fundamentals Life, Family, and Career Wellness Facebook group. There you'll get access to live trainings, helpful resources, Q&As with our guests, and professional mom community that's here to support you in thriving your way. I'm cheering you on, and I hope to hear from you soon.